What's up, fellow podcaster? In today's podcast interview breakdown, I'll be reacting to an interview with Joe Rogan on Hotboxin with Mike Tyson. Here we go.
How do you feel about all this magnificent success you've been having?
This is a great question because I think he's more so, this is an older interview, but anything, Rogan is the podcasting king. So for somebody to make over $1 million with a certain company is quite the thing in the podcasting world, because if you get into podcasting, think you're just going to start making money right off the rip, you're in for a rude awakening. So you better love it. But it's interesting because if you watch enough of his other podcasts, or not his other podcasts, but his friends who also have podcasts talk about it, it was over 100 million. But I kick myself every single time that I didn't save the clip for when he said it took 10 years to get to that. So he started podcasting when he was 43, I believe, and he didn't get that huge check until 53. And remember, that was before podcasting was anywhere close to what it is today. So, and you can kind of tell that he's super humble about it, but man, I've always wanted to ask people like this. It's just like, when you got that check, and you've gotten some big checks before, but do you just sit there and just look at it and be like, holy smokes? Like, what is your first initial reaction? Because you didn't get all that money up front, and even if he did, 40% goes to the government, goes to managers, agents, yada, but still, to have what's called FU money, what does that feel like? And how do you stay so humble? And how do you stay so hungry for what you do? Because I could easily see somebody letting their foot off the gas.
It's bizarre. It doesn't seem normal,
Every time we
very
turn around, we hear about you getting a deal here, getting a deal here, getting a deal here, and then we heard somebody try to cancel you.
There's been a lot of that.
Yeah, that's why we got this stuff relevant, so no one can cancel you, and you could do all the counseling.
How do you feel about that, like the whole cancel culture?
Well, what it is it's a culture of people
question.
being able to express themselves. Mm-hmm. And when people can express themselves, they can change the way other people feel about things. They can get people upset at things. You could say things that you've never been able to say before. Mm-hmm. So many people have the ability to express themselves now. So it's like you can get someone fired. Like if you decide that you're going to pile onto someone because you don't like what they said or what they did, you can get them fired. That's a new thing in history. Because before, you would have to have like a letter writing campaign. Like if someone had done something and they were a movie star and you didn't want to go to their movies, you had to like organize. Someone had to figure out a way, like, how do we let people know that this guy sucks? Yeah. Like, what do you have to do? And they would have to have made like, they would have to get like mailing lists and actual send out letters and shit. They would have to find a way. Now all you'd have to do is like tweet about something or make a YouTube video about something. So in some ways, it's like it's forcing people to get their shit together.
Exactly.
How do you think...
Before we move on from this, I'm always curious on how do people process things. So when people are, it's so easy to come after Rogan because he's at the top. Like there was a picture that showed his viewership versus any mainstream or corporate media, and he was just smashing them all combined. It's like, how does it feel to be more watched than mainstream media? And how, when you're being quote unquote, when people are coming at you to cancel, like what is your process? Do you sit there and look at it? Do people have to tell you? Does your wife have to tell you? How do you find out? Do your agents and managers all dogpile on and they're like, hey man, we've got a bit of a problem here. We're going to need to talk to some lawyers, and like, do we need to keep this on the DL, or does he have the authority and the FU money being like, yeah, no, I'm going to do what I want and how I'm going to do it? And if it is like that, how does it feel to have that kind of power? Because not a lot of people have that power. And I believe I'm a huge advocate for free speech, even if it's something I don't like, because I don't know who's dictating what's good and what's bad. And if that falls into the wrong hands, it can get messy. But that's a huge controversial thing to say now. And it's like, why also are we giving so much power to 10% of people who, it just kind of reminds me of like if there's a screaming child in a grocery store and they want some gummy bears and they kick and scream and throw a tantrum until they get them. That's what this cancel culture reminds me of. So it'll be interesting to see what people have to say about me saying that. And it would be awesome if Joe saw this, and it would be cool to see what he would have to say.
I think that affects people in the art realm, like comedians, right? That must be hard for comedians now, right? With the cancel culture.
It definitely is. I mean, Ari Shaffir said something very smart about it. He said it made comedy dangerous again. He's like, because people can pretend that you're not just talking shit. They can take your words out of context and try to make it look like you mean something by what you're saying. And that's you write something in print.
That's when the counterculture starts to recounter itself. That means we can't say something because you don't like it, you particularly don't like it, or your organization don't like it.
Yeah. There's that too. It's like when you have a corporation and you're in control of like what gets shown. Like they can just decide if you have something to say about something and they don't agree with it, they can just decide to remove your videos.
Yeah.
And you know that. So you have to watch what you say and watch what you do.
But it's different.
So
it's different.
I wonder if there's like an upside to it. I wonder if all this extra sensitivity is going to make people more conscious about what their words mean to other people.
No, listen, no, it's not going to do that.
You don't think so?
No,
there's not no upside at all?
There'll always be somebody to say, F them.
Right.
What about me? I got my feeling. I'm a human being too.
That's true. It does get to a point where like people want to be, they want to have felt bad about something someone said. They want to be upset. Like it's recreational outrage for some people.
Like,
do you feel like when they come after you, do you feel like they should be coming after you? And since you love comedy so much, what is a joke? Excuse me. Have you written a joke that would get you canceled today? What is it? Can you tell me? Can you tell the joke? Do you want to roll the dice? Or can you tell me off camera? Or can you just tell me in my ear? That's what I would want to know, because I know he's got it. And it's like, back when I used to live in LA and cover these red carpets and things like that. By the way, if this is your first time seeing a podcast interview breakdown, I have 10 years of broadcasting experience. The last 5 are spent in Los Angeles interviewing celebrities on the red carpet. And I just wish at the time I saw Joe Rogan live with Ari Shaffir, and I just wish I would have, they went out and talked to people at the end. I just wish I would have got a picture or talked to him or something. I definitely regret that now.
People are too woke.
Yeah, it's just like,
what's that woke stuff? I heard about that.
Trying so hard.
Tell me what woke means.
It's complicated. It means good. Some people think it means good things.
What's the abbreviation mean?
It's essentially like being enlightened and
be
like
awake.
Yeah, be awake to something that's bigger. That's bigger than yourself.
Then what should we know? That what's bigger than us? God. After that, what's bigger than us?
Well, that's what a lot of people believe the problem is that a lot of people don't have God, and they substitute God for other things that mimic the same kind of control religion has, and ideologies are one of those things.
Listen,
I have a theory that it could be some type of trauma that they have had in their past. The people that are super woke and just like super either far left or far right, I truly believe there is some serious underlying issues. Whatever happened in their childhood, they could be mentally abused, physically abused, other type of abuse could have been happening. You would have to talk to those people and see if you could even get a straight answer out of them. But I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen as well, when people try to talk to an extreme right or extreme left, you'd be better off talking to the wall.
I'm Muslim, right? So my daughter said, God, Jesus said we were gods, but we can die like normal kings and princes. I said, yeah, but get fuck no. I said, look it up, because I'm always doing it. I'm always confrontational with my daughter. I said, look it up, show me it. Like, where is it? And she's looking through the Bible, she's looking. I said, you can't find it, can you? And she's waiting. And then she finds that Jesus said, we all are gods, but we could fall just like any king or prince once we're hit. We're going to die. We're living. So we're demigods, pretty much, Jesus said. We're gods just with flaws. And so since you know you have flaws, but our only flaw is dying, truly. Because we know we could be allowed to be forgiven for everything we did, but we can't be forgiven for dying. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
And what do you think happens when we die? We're like trees, like when the plants die, and then when the summertime comes, they come back to life, they blossom again. Is that what human beings do, you think?
What's fascinating about the
How do
Bible
you know
is
what
that
makes
stuff.
you think that doesn't happen?
Nobody knows,
No one
right?
knows. No one knows. I know there's God, though. I know there's
Yeah,
a
but I
God.
feel like, that's like we're like plants. We're dead. Now it's time for, we die and God creates. Whatever you do, God's going to create. You play football, he's going to create.
And that's another thing with beliefs, whether you're talking about politics, religion, any highly sensitive subject. I think everybody needs to just accept that if you want to believe in something, whether it's politically, like if you're gonna be right, on the right, don't try to jam it down somebody's throat. If you're on the left, don't jam it down somebody's throat. You don't have to be a jerk about it. Life's not fair. There's going to be people out there, no matter how much you preach this, that, and the other, there are going to be some bad people out there, but people just need to just chill out. And it's like, look, if you think this way, cool. If you think that way, I don't agree. Cool. If you believe in this, cool. If you believe in that, cool. If you want to change, you'll do your own research and come to your own conclusion.
Mm-hmm. You lose games, he's going to create. You win championships, he's going to create. Whatever happens, God is creating.
Yeah.
The wild thing about the Bible is that it's thousands of years old and people are still reading it. They're still reading this thing that was the framework for civilization.
You know what that tells you? That people are born to worship. We're born to worship people.
There's probably I think they've isolated that part of like human psychology. That's like it's something that we need.
Even the hardest man in the world will say, "Wow, you did a magnificent job. That was splendid," or whatever. It's in our nature. Don't care how tough we are. Don't care how successful we are. It's in our nature to just worship.
Yeah, I remember, I think, reading something saying that the Bible is probably the most bought book ever. Or like most like read book ever. It's pretty honestly amazing.
It's probably that and then Harry Potter. Harry Potter's probably a strong second.
That's no cap.
Harry Potter might have the Bible beat.
We might want
to look that up. Harry Potter might have the Bible beat.
The Bible's interesting.
That's how gangster that lady is.
Everybody is.
I feel like in that moment, Joe was going to ask Jamie, his producer, to look that up, and I've always wanted to ask, like, where did he find Jamie? And is it that simple? Like, what is his actual job? What does he do? I would love to interview him as well. So Joe or Jamie, if you would like to come on my podcast called The Power of Video, you can contact me here. And I've got tons of questions for you, buddy.
Everybody got the Bibles is all different stories.
Well, Mike, that's what we were talking about, that the Dead Sea Scrolls and the podcast that we were doing earlier. That's where it gets really wild. That's thousands of years old. They found it in a cave in Qumran. They just found these scrolls that has versions of the Bible they'd never had seen before.
Well, Constantine, he said, hey, you could put that in the Bible. No, you can't put that in the Bible.
Yeah.
Remember, like 300 A.D. or B.C.
Whatever the New Testament was, whenever they
he
did
brought
that,
all the religious people, said, no, you can't put that in the Bible. Yeah, you can put that. No, not that. Well, maybe that. Yeah, that's okay, but take that out.
The thing.
If that's true, and I don't like this is really interesting to hear what they have to say, but like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little superstitious, and I feel like questioning that sort of stuff can get you hit by lightning if you're not careful. If that's true, would that be considered censorship back then?
thing is, like, for sure, man had a hand in it, but when you go back and read, like, what were they trying to say? Like, what was when it was written in ancient Hebrew and then they translated it into Latin, they translated it into Greek, like, when it was in ancient Hebrew, like, what were they trying to say? What was this? What were you writing down?
What they're saying right now, what preachers are saying right now, surrender to God. Regardless of who, surrender to God. That's what they're saying. That's what it's ever been since the beginning of time. Surrender to God. Since the beginning of let there be light, surrender to God.
And I think it's interesting because I think in majority of religions, like you said, you're Muslim, right? Yeah. There's always one entity, right, that you want to worship and give your all to, and devote yourself to. So I think it's interesting because essentially God's in everything, kind of, right? Does that make sense? It's just in different forms, different religions, and different.
Every religion has some kind of God, right? Yeah. Except for weird ones. There's probably a few made up ones. Don't have
listen.
God.
At one time, I was explaining to him earlier that at one time superstition was a religion. Superstition was a religion. People,
I didn't know that.
Hold my butt. I used to hold my butt when I go by.
Okay, I think it's safe to say I was wondering why he's just super chill. I am almost positive these two are faded on something, whether they are microdosing with mushrooms or edibles, or Joe Rogan's known for other extracurricular activity. Well, no, that makes it sound like something else. So other plants. I'm just curious, but I think that's one of those statements. I don't know. I'm not a fact checker, but they're all just like, oh, that was the look of, is that true? It sounded good, but is it true?
Catholic Church of graveyards or something. So always hold my butt in the Catholics. Something crazy. I don't know what the hell I would do. My mother told me to do this crap.
But let's move on to a different note. So now you're in Texas.
I love this guy.
Now you're in Texas.
I love this guy.
You're from California.
Yeah.
Before that, I did. Once again, these podcast interview breakdowns are coming from experience. This is in no way to cut this guy down or cut anybody down, but this is a problem I see with a lot of celebrity podcasters and what I call passionate podcasters. It's like there's just zero structure whatsoever. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they may have done Mike and Joe had done a podcast right before they did this one. So it's kind of what I would call like a pod swap, or it's like you come on my podcast, I come on your podcast, and there's just no structure. And if I were to interview Joe Rogan, I would try and go through and figure out stuff. Well, first of all, you got to figure out who your audience is and who Mike's audience is. I don't know. You'd have to look at the demographic of age and just see what time, like what section of the country are they. I mean, just go through the comments section and you would figure out somewhat. It's kind of whether you're a podcast manager or a community manager, you've got to figure out what your demographic wants. Like the Full Send podcast, they do a bunch of podcast interview breakdowns on their podcast, and their demographic is college kids. So it's like you would ask what a college kid would be like if this were the Full Send podcast and Joe Rogan was on there. It would be, okay, like our audience is this. What do you think they'd want to know? And you would structure it in a way and do a little bit of research and maybe even try to find certain little nuggets of information on Joe Rogan that he really doesn't talk about, or just listen to interviews where he just like, you can tell when somebody's really passionate about something, they're like, they perk up a little bit. You could just hear it in their voice, and you just have to really do some serious research. But I said this on my last podcast interview breakdown with Eminem on this episode, on this podcast. It's like, why are you starting a podcast? Is it a money grab? Do you just want to, like, is it just for fun? And it's like, and it kind of just helps develop the actual show. Like, had this guy, I don't know who this guy is, had he not been there to kind of like guide the conversation a little bit. That's another thing with a lot of these celebrity podcasters. They're just being like thrown into it and there's no real direction. So they would need somebody like this guy or somebody like myself on camera or off camera to kind of listen, like active listening. So when there is a pause like that, you can take over and kind of like merge into something, like into another direction, like he's about to do, because you could see that they were talking about religion, then that was it. So somebody could have been like, oh, we're kind of losing our viewership, or like you can almost feel like, okay, this conversation's getting dull. And it's like, okay, we need to move on to something else. But the whole point after everything I just said is you definitely want some form of structure so you don't get stuck like this. And it's like, what do we talk about now? And then you have to like edit, and it just makes it a lot smoother.
What is it like down here? What was the whole vibe? Do you like it?
Well, I came out here in May of 2020 when LA was locked down, and 2 weeks had become, a couple of months, and there was no hint of anything opening up. It was weird. And we came here and it was totally different. We came here and everybody was going out. You go to the lake, there's people on boats. And my kids jumped in the water and they were playing. They're like, we want to live here. And I was like, I will here right now. And my wife agreed, and we said, let's go, let's try it. And so it was a different feel.
Houston is nice.
What is it like real estate shopping with Joe Rogan? Like, how do you find an agent who is like professional and isn't going to be like, I've got Joe Rogan as a client. So how do you find a solid real estate agent? And then it's like, do you have a certain amount of money you want to spend on it would just be very interesting to see the home buying process with Joe Rogan. Sounds like a show.
There's so much fear.
Wow, this is nice, Houston.
It's so nice. People are so nice here, but it was just a different feel than LA. And then I realized part of it is like in LA, you're connected to television shows and movies. You're connected to like executives and studio heads and Hollywood. It's like a different world because comedians are always trying to get on those shows. They're always trying to get booked in these different
You're a mean
things.
comedian.
I'm not a mean comedian.
Yes, you are.
No.
I saw you on one of your shows. You were mean to everybody.
No.
You're hitting people. You ever see it? Let's look at some of the show.
Please don't pull up any of my shows.
Joe Rogan being mean.
I wonder, it's funny he just said that. I don't know about anybody else who is on camera or who does podcasting, YouTube. When I was on TV, I used to have to watch my broadcast with my boss. And let me tell you, that is some awkward stuff. I don't like the way I sound. I don't like the way I look. And then I started hearing other people say the exact same thing. And it's just interesting because that's so if you've gotten this far in the video, I'm putting together an online program right now. And one of the pillars is presence, online presence, on camera presence, on how to be your authentic self, because a lot of people see certain people and it's like, oh, I'm going to try to be like Rogan or da 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 da. But trying to be yourself on camera, believe it or not, is not easier, or it's not as easy as it looks. And then when you start to study yourself like an athlete and watch back your episodes, it is like nails on a chalkboard. I cannot stand it. So I would love to ask him, do you ever go back and watch your stuff? What do you like about yourself as a podcaster? What do you not like about yourself? Is there any crutches you use? Like even right now, I just noticed that I talk a lot with my hands, so I'm gonna stop doing that. But it's little stuff like that that you pick up on over the years, and you just keep doing it again and again and again.
I'm never mean unless someone's mean to me. I'm that's the last thing
when
I
I'm on my
be.
show, I always.
Who was the last person to be mean to you? What did they say, and what did you do back? Yeah.
Like hecklers. I love hecklers.
You like hecklers?
I love the rip into, and that's the dark side of me.
I don't like hecklers.
That's the dark side of me. I love the heckler.
So essentially, you just
Who have you, Joe Rogan, gotten a heckler in the last 5 years, and what did they say? Because it's interesting, when we saw him about 5-6 years ago with Ari Shaffir, people were talking during Ari Shaffir and he just ripped into him. Like it was like he was waiting for it to happen. So it'd be interesting. It's like, who heckles Joe Rogan knowing full well he is a UFC, well, he's not a fighter, but he knows how to fight. If you've ever seen him kick a punching bag, it is terrifying. So I don't think he gets heckled anymore. And if he does, is that person still alive?
You just found a new place.
It felt like more relaxed here. Like people are nicer.
Southern hospitality.
It was a different kind of vibe.
I agree. It's like heaven out here.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Are you really Googling, am I mean? How dare you?
Who's doing that?
What are you doing? And sticking that in front of my face?
We
We're
forgot
talking
that
about
stuff.
how
We
to
forgot
not make
that
someone
stuff.
feel comfortable. He's
forgot
got a
that
giant
stuff.
screen. Is Joe Rogan mean?
You saw that
Fuck
stuff,
out
right?
of here with that.
What's your sign, Joe?
I'm a Leo, but
Yeah.
do you believe in that stuff?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, listen. Jewish people didn't believe in that either, right? And then they found a 7th century, synagogue with the whole, look it up, 7th century synagogue with the horoscope on the floor.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was religion.
So after you live in LA, this is actually pretty big. This dabbles into like the woo-woo stuff. And I also just realized when I said that they were faded earlier, this is a 420 special. So obviously they're on something. I'm an idiot. But I didn't believe in the Zodiac thing either until I was working as a bartender on Sunset, and a girl that I was working with brought in this book about this thick full of Zodiac stuff, and she just knew everything about it and was kind of going through and rating me and doing all her stuff. And like, she's like, start thinking about your past relationships and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm just like, holy crap. So I know a lot of people aren't into that and it's a little woo and people think it's garbage, but find somebody who's really into it and let me know what you think.
How the f did they figure that out?
See?
How did they figure out?
That's,
7th
great
century,
question.
What is it?
that's different.
Synagogue? 7th century synagogue.
I've never had someone explain to me how they figured out astrology. Have you ever heard it explained?
Great question too.
Listen, people believe it.
I know a lot of people believe it. I know a lot of people like live their life. Like Nancy Reagan used to live her life by it. Did you know that? Yeah. Nancy Reagan was like
listen,
heavy.
My mentor
Google this.
Customato did. My
Did he?
mentor Customato
Really?
did
How do you
his
live your
by
life
it.
by that, though?
You
She would
can.
make decisions.
You read it
Like-
every day.
She would make decisions
Every
like
day
what
and every
Ron
night.
could do and not do, and Ronald Reagan, the president, what he could and couldn't do, what should and shouldn't do based on horoscopes, based on astrology.
And listen,
If she had
right?
someone to like, I guess that the people that are real good, they find out what time you were born, what part of the
Listen,
country.
You know what I find
you
out?
know,
My
what-
mentor Customato is a damn mystic. Everything he believed was psychological. He never. That's how come he died. He never went to the hospital. He didn't believe in doctors.
How long did you
Real.
live for?
77.
Wow.
Wow,
Never
77,
went.
no hospital?
Never went to the doctors. Very rarely. Never did that stuff. Never
Just
did
ate
the
clean,
needle, yeah.
ate clean.
No, he didn't eat well either. He just didn't believe in hospitals. They're a different time. His parents died like in the 20s or something. So he's seen people come in there with the little stretcher and carry them in. And, you know, they might be some Irish doctor that may drop the body and hit on the head and laugh because it's some Italian guy. I'm serious.
Mike, look at that, a horoscope.
Look at that. That's
Yeah, that's the one in the
incredible.
synagogue.
That's
So
incredible.
listen,
Joe Rogan has a very distinctive laugh, and every time he laughs, it makes me laugh. Like him, especially if you've ever seen those interviews he does with Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer, and Ari Shaffir when they just sit around and it's like a very dude conversation. It is hilarious. And when I can't remember his last name, but Joey comes on, the bigger Italian guy. I mean, it is some of the funniest stuff. So do you know how infectious your laugh is? Because when you start laughing, I think everybody starts to laugh. And who was the last person who made you cry laughing, and what did they say?
listen, don't ever doubt me when I tell somebody something. Okay? People try to doubt me, you know. Jews don't believe in this, so why is it in the synagogue? Listen, this thing been here longer than our grandparents, so they have to mean something. 7th century? God, man, 700 AD? Come on, man. That's 700 years after Christ they're doing this stuff.
What do you think is more accurate? Do you think like that horoscope or the Chinese horoscopes that have like, year of the goat?
Listen,
which one is more accurate?
They're all combined. They're combined in one. They're all one.
It's all one sort of thing. Where they're figuring out
probably different
personalities.
languages, different culture, but it's all one.
And Joe Rogan mentioned this. He's like, how does that happen? So I feel like you would need to go to somebody who is a expert with astrology, or just go down the rabbit hole and just on YouTube and Google and just figure out like where it started. And I always wonder with this sort of stuff, because the Egyptians were super into astrology. It's like the pyramids all aligned with like the North Star and Orion's belt and all that stuff. And it's like it aligned perfectly. So how in the world does that happen? Like, what type of technology did they have? Were they getting? This would be a great segue into I know they're going to talk about aliens at some point. So this would be a great segue into this. But yeah, to figure out where astrology started, and it would be a great question.
I wonder if you read like someone's horoscope from both of those things and tried to.
They do.
I wonder if they line up though.
Listen, they've been doing this longer than we've been alive.
Well, the people that are really good at it, they insist that it's like very complicated, and that it's like reading someone's thing. It's not guesswork. You have to like compile all this data, what time and what part of the world, and what time of the year.
Listen, some people would call it black magic. It's more black magic than you would say Christianity or Islamic or anything, wouldn't you say? But it makes sense, though.
It does make some kind of sense that if everything is moving and everything has gravity and it moves through the cosmos and it's in different positions.
I'm the Cancer. I cry over anything. I'm crying over Rose. Rose is crying. She got me. I'm crying.
She made me cry too, though.
Yeah, but it's just I'm emotional like that. That's why I was successful as a fighter, because I'd rather kill this motherfucker. But I want to do it right. I don't want to just go there. It's just it's a way to do it. But I got the desire to want to kill somebody. You have to have the desire to want to hurt somebody to be a fighter.
Did they just make a Titanic reference? I think they said Rose, and it took me a second. It's like, what is he talking about? I'm pretty sure he just made a Titanic reference, and it's so interesting to see Mike Tyson, a born killer in the ring, like say that he is just kind of a big softie. Same with Rogan. And I would have to ask, it's like, well, if you cry over a lot of stuff, does it make you cry when that Sarah McLachlan commercial comes on and you hear, I think that song's called Angel. I wonder if they cry during that. And another quote, when was the last time you cried and what was it about? To both of them.
Speaking of fighting, UFC 273, what do you think about Hazmat?
Let me see these guys. Who's Hagamash? Let's see who these guys. Who's fighting now?
Kamzat Chimaev.
So once again, this comes with experience. Once again, I am just nitpicking. I have experience with things like this. So if you're going to segue, try and be smooth with it. Like, you don't have to be like, speaking of fighting, how about UFC? I mean, they were talking about astrology or something, and you could have been like, he was talking about the dates and the times of where you've been. It's like, well, do you think any fighters in the UFC or boxing were into astrology and wouldn't take a fighter's, like, are they as superstitious when it comes to this sort of thing? And then they would have started talking about fighters and and then it's like you don't even mention it. And then you start, UFC is coming up next weekend and Do you think so-and-so is into astrology, something, but to kind of guide the conversation into it without addressing like a sudden like change. You want your conversations to kind of flow, have like an ebb and flow, like an emotional, I always say like an emotional roller coaster. And I got to stop stop moving my hand.
Yeah, he's from Chechnya.
You know who called him that?
Psychopath.
You know who else called him that?
It's a wild dude.
Wait, what'd you call him? We called him
Hamzat.
Oh, Hamzat?
Hamzat Chimaev.
Okay, yeah.
Colby Covington calls him shot.
So does
It's very rude.
So,
A lot of other guys do it too.
Come-
Oh yeah. Remember?
Listen, say that, yo. He calls him
He
what?
calls him shot.
What? Listen, I can't
Very
say
rude.
nothing about
It's
that.
very rude.
Remember,
but he's just with his head, obviously.
Remember Izzy? We had Izzy on the show. Adesanya.
Oh, he says it too?
Adesanya. He said that too on the show. Is that like a thing now? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
It
he
sounds
called
like
me-
something
he
Izzy
called
would
this
say.
guy this.
Did you watch that fight, Mike?
Which one?
Between him and Gilbert Burns?
No, but I know this guy has some issues that he looks like a nice guy, but he's kind of psychopathic.
Oh, he's
right?
just full psychopath. Full psychopath.
You think he's a rising star?
Oh yeah, I
he
mean
is a
he
star.
just
He's a
beat
star.
Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns was a number 2 contender, I think,
Probably
or number
beat the
3.
shit out of him, huh?
He beat him. No, it was a close fight.
Yeah, wow.
It was a good fight. It was a very, very good fight. Some people even thought Gilbert won. Like,
Let's look at
I have good friends that texted me afterwards and they thought Gilbert won. I thought it was a very good fight, though. Very close fight. It was the first time Hamzat had ever been tested. Gilbert dropped him.
But you know
Gilbert
he
hit him
can
with a
take it.
big right hand and dropped him.
How do you think he'd match up with Adesanya and Usman?
See, the thing is, like,
They look too big for him.
Usman beat Burns in his last outing pretty handily. I mean, Burns caught him in the first round with a big shot, but Usman survived easily and then stopped Burns afterwards, and just was the first guy to be able to really dominate him like that.
Burns,
So there's like,
got this.
So a couple things with this, I feel like I know this room is kind of sectioned off, but it'd be awesome to have a TV kind of like Rogan does on his, so where you can, as a viewer, you can kind of see what they're talking about or who they're talking about. And earlier, first of all, I have no idea what all these names and stuff that they're throwing around. But as I said earlier, you could tell as soon as they started talking about fighting, Joe Rogan slipped into that. I mean, you could see it if you went back and looked, but he's like super calm, super confident. He's like, okay, let's talk about this. And when I was talking about demographics, Joe Rogan is a UFC fighter and Tyson is a boxer. So obviously their demographic likes fighting. So you would figure out what they wanted to know. So this would maybe even start the podcast talking about fighting and boxing, because this is probably what they want to hear about. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't done the R&D on this, so I don't know, but that's what I would do. And also, and this is once again nitpicking just a little bit, I don't know who's doing the editing for Mike Tyson's audio. Like, he should have some cool crisp audio. Those are Shure SM7Bs. Those are the microphones that are the most famous right now. Rogan uses them. Michael Jackson used them on Thriller. But if they don't have the cloud adapter and a good interface, and that room isn't audio treated, that mic is worth not as much as it's worth. That's a super expensive mic. And also, even if all that's done, they need a little bit of post-production on it. I just feel like, I mean, it sounds good, but it could sound really good. And the fact that they have a budget for this is what kills me also, because this is a big mistake I see with celebrity podcasts, is they buy the nice equipment, but they don't have the good, I don't know if whoever they hired doesn't know how to use it, or they're not doing anything in post and they're just throwing it out there and whatever. But that is just me nitpicking, just to be clear.
high at this level.
He's a good fighter, but he gets hit a lot.
Well, Burns is a wild man. He's a wild man. It's one of the reasons why he's so good, but it's also one of the reasons why he took this fight, because he's got the balls to fight this big, giant welterweight and go to war with him.
Yeah.
And very little of the fight was on the ground. And even on the ground, the thing is, like, Gilbert's like, he dropped him with a jab. Gilbert is super dangerous on the ground. I mean, he's a 4-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. And really started his career at 155, fought at 55 for a while, but at 170, I mean, he beat Tyron Woodley pretty handily. He's a beast, man. He's really good.
He's enthusiastic, too.
Oh, he's a beast.
Enthusiasm makes it happen.
Yeah.
I always tell my daughter that. The enthusiasm makes it happen, baby.
He's a born fighter.
Yeah.
And he's also a guy who competes regularly in grappling at an elite level.
Wow.
Yeah, he fought Rafael Lovato. He had a match with him, a jiu-jitsu match with him, and beat him. And Lovato was like top of the food chain, American Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, like world champion in Bellator, like an elite guy. And Gilbert beat him in a grappling match. I mean, he didn't submit him, but he beat him on points in a grappling match, which is crazy for a guy that's fighting at this level in the UFC to also be able to compete at a super high level in grappling simultaneously. I mean, that's what a warrior Gilbert Burns is. He's
Question for Joe. I know you're trained in mixed martial arts, but I know you don't fight. You're more of a commentator. Who, if you were to train for a fight, what division would you be in? What weight class would you be in? And who would you want to fight? Who do you think you could beat and why? And who would you be absolutely terrified to get into the octagon with and why?
He's a beast. But that dude, Hamzat, is the fucking truth.
Real deal.
He's the fucking truth. Because he got hit with bombs. He got his head spun around backwards, never backed off.
He kicked him off the
Oh,
picture.
yeah.
He almost kicked him out of the picture of the television, right?
This is a battle. That's
Right
another
here,
battle.
he got
This is a
dropped here and immediately dives in and grabs a hold of him and takes him down. I mean, he was on Queer Street right there.
They fighting hard.
It was a war.
Yeah, it was a war.
The first fight that he was ever really tested inside the octagon, and all the other fights that he's had 4 wins. He's been hit twice, and that's not shit. 4 wins, he was hit twice. In this fight, he was hit like 119 times or something crazy. It was an amazing fight.
Listen, didn't we just read about the Chetnians? What
Yeah, we
kind
just
of
did.
mentality
Yeah.
they are?
Tough
That's
people,
their
man.
mentality too.
Yeah.
And you know what they do for entertainment? They wrestle bears and they no, listen. I've been there, I traveled, I stayed there. I've been there. I know the president ran them. And they watch like Evel Knievel stunts and tricks and the guy with a motorcycle. Just the whole time you sit there and watch it.
They have a lot of MMA fighters that come out of there.
Sorry.
I'm just gonna say they get behind a lot of MMA fighters. It's very like combat sports driven country. So when a guy like Hamzat comes out of there, you also got to think like horrible place to live.
Listen,
it's dangerous.
Life is
middle
not worth
war.
a quarter.
Yeah.
Life is just worth a word.
Yeah.
Not worth anything.
So-
I'd be curious to what he thinks of, I think it's called slap boxing. If you don't know what that is, watch the women do it. That is you gotta see. I sometimes it gets on my algorithm on TikTok and you just see these people, men and women, stand across a table and just 1, 2, and like they dial in and then boom. So it would be, what do you think of that? Because he used to react to a lot of like fake fights or fake stuff on YouTube. So I'd be curious to know what he thought about that. And if you had to slap box somebody, who would it be and why?
War-torn part of the world, and the people that
Would he slap box with Carlos Mencia? If you know, you know.
survive, guys like him, and then he goes over to Sweden, becomes an elite wrestler. The people that he trains with, he's like their brothers. He would never fight them. He's like very tightly knit with the people he trains with. Because he just started training with this English guy, Darren Till. It's kind of a hilarious duo. Darren Till is this Muay Thai fighter from England. He fights in the UFC, and he started training with Hamza in Sweden. They become like best friends. And now they call each other brother, and like everybody's his brother. So he's got like this tight-knit team until he goes to war. And then when he goes to war, he just wants to kill everybody.
Listen, no one knows how much
That's how you
the
gotta do
warriors.
it,
Nobody knows how much the warrior spirit is in the English people.
Yeah.
They're nothing but warriors. It's nothing but warriors. That's all they know how to do is fight. You go to England, everybody in England know how to do is fight. They may know how to win, but everybody knows how to fight.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at all. Joe, I was curious to know, you starting off commentating for UFC, did you ever think it was going to be as big as it was?
No, not at all. No, I always thought it would be some weird fringe thing that I liked. I like some fringe things. I like watching professional pool. I play pool, so I watch. Nobody watches that, right? I watch it.
Yeah.
So I thought it was like that, one of those fringe
Minnesota
things.
Fats and Willie Moscone.
Yes,
I used
back
to
in the
watch those,
day.
and they had them. What was this guy named Don? He was like the protege of Minnesota. Willie Moscone. I forgot his name. He was good too. Don something. Yeah, I used to watch those guys.
I'm not sure who that would be, but
I
yeah.
met Minnesota Fat and Willie Moscone before.
Oh, did you really?
I was a young kid, 13,
Oh, wow.
14.
Oh wow.
Yeah, pool used to be a big thing. Now nobody really. You got to watch it on YouTube. That's the only way people watch
I gotta
it.
keep it real. Pool became a big thing because of Minnesota Fat. Because he was the Muhammad Ali of pool nigga. He talks so much shit.
Do you know he stole his name from the movie The Hustler?
Minnesota Fat?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
He was New York Fats at first,
Yep.
right?
Yes, you do know. Mike knows. That's it. Yeah,
It's
he was
just
New
not
York
the same as
Fats.
Minnesota. Minnesota's that slick pimp stuff, right?
Yeah.
Minnesota Fat.
Because Minnesota Fats, the guy was like a hustler. He was like a one-pocket player and a hustler, and he just took the
He
game.
could never beat Willie Moscone in
No.
a fair game.
No.
He got to play the trick shot.
He could beat him in a game of one pocket, maybe. They would play like
Willie
each guy would
Moscone
have
was his
one
master.
corner
Yeah,
pocket.
yeah.
Moscone was his master, but
Yeah.
this is the difference. Moscone could always beat him, but watching him play is exciting
Yeah.
than watching Moscone play.
Well, he would talk all
Moscone,
kinds
talking. Yeah, he was the Muhammad Ali of pool. He was talking.
of talking shit and running out.
This is gonna come up your mother's skirt right now.
Yeah.
When I
And he was a gambler. That was the big thing. is that
Okay.
He was a gambler. Moscone was a big-time tournament player.
The guy that could beat him in straight pool couldn't
Yeah.
beat him for money.
Yeah, Moscone was
money.
the guy that would win like world championships in straight
Clean
pool.
guy. Mr.
Yeah.
Moscone is
Nice
a very
tie.
clean, classy guy.
just hustle
Yeah.
people, just hustle
Yeah,
people.
Minnesota
he's
Fats,
the
who
best
used to be New York Fats.
He's a monster.
He was just a talker who played real good pool. Who just
Everybody was
was,
scared of him.
he had a great personality. He was a big personality, you know?
Fun fact, my dad bought me a pool table when I was like maybe 12, 13, and me and him used to run it all the
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool that used to be your thing.
You ever hear the singer Emma James?
Emma James.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard the name.
She said Minnesota Fats was her father.
Oh, wow. Probably. He probably got around. That was back in the day you get laid if you played good pool. That's hilarious. You know?
He
Try
was
that.
more
What's your
than a-
strategy?
he was more
Mike,
than a
how you
pool
going to get laid?
player.
I'm going to learn how to play pool real good.
He was more than a pool
Hole
player.
in one.
I mean, this conversation as a moderator or a producer, probably if I even whether you're on camera or not or in their ear or not, to maybe suggest shifting a little bit. I don't know about you guys. I'm getting, and respectfully, it's great to see these guys. This is just one of those things where it's just like I can feel, I don't know, my intuition says people are kind of fading out of this. But, or if you're going to run with it, Joe, I know you like bow hunting. Do you like pool as much as you do bow hunting? How good are you? Could you hustle if you really wanted to? And what's your game? Do you have a custom cue? Can you do any trick shots? Like, do you have a pool table in your house? I mean, you could go down that whole. You could go down that whole thing.
Big personality, He's more than a
Yes.
pool player.
No, he was an entertainer. He
Yeah.
definitely made the sport bigger, but a big thing that made the sport bigger was that movie, The Hustler.
Yeah.
The Hustler was a huge movie. And when that movie came out,
Gleason, Johnny, what was the name?
Jackie Gleason and Paul Newman. And then they did another one with Tom
Jackie
Cruise, The
Gleason's
Color of
so-
Money.
Yeah, but Jackie Gleason just so cool.
Oh, he was the best.
He's
He
so
was like the
cool.
first guy to ever play pool on TV that actually knew how to play pool, or in the
He's so
movies, I
cool.
should say. Jackie Gleason could play some f***ing pool. You could tell. Like when he's playing, like the fluidity of his stroke when he's
Yeah.
going through the ball, like that guy can play.
I saw his documentary. He had that amazing documentary. Successful, all like always been successful.
He was an interesting guy. All he liked to do is get drunk and play golf and get drunk and play pool.
He was like a modern day. What was the guy name again? W.C. Fields.
Yeah. Do you know the story about the house that he had built to look like a UFO?
Who?
Jackie Gleason.
Are you serious?
Jackie Gleason was friends with Nixon. And Jackie Gleason and Nixon, legend has, they were drinking one night and Nixon says, "You want to see a UFO?" And he takes Jackie Gleason to some hangar where they have a crashed UFO.
Yeah, I heard
and he
that
shows
too.
it to him.
It shows
and
him the alien too?
Jackie Gleason gets a f***ing house built in the shape of a UFO. It's in New York State. And it was for sale at one point in time. I can't believe I didn't know it was for sale until somebody bought it.
So you believe in UFOs? You believe that the government's hiding stuff from us?
I don't.
Two things. I wish I could Google something right now and be like, I wonder if that house still exists and if this is. Obviously there's some truth to it, but you just got to see it for yourself. So it'd be cool to actually see it, go down the rabbit hole of the story a little bit. And this is what I'm talking about, the transition into UFOs. Did you see how like smooth, he didn't have to be like, speaking of UFOs, you know, he just went right into it. So, and listen, I'm not perfect by any means, and I do the same thing sometimes as a crutch or like, oh, speaking of this, or just like an awkward segue. But man, that was smooth into, okay, now we're going to start talking about aliens and things like that. Hopefully they bring up the pyramids or Stonehenge or something like that. I live in Georgia. We have a version of Stonehenge that recently, there's a whole story behind that, but great transition.
I don't disbelieve. I don't believe. I don't disbelieve, but I don't believe.
Listen,
I think it's possible.
Can I give you my opinion?
Yes, please.
You know what I saw? Pick it up.
Look at that house, though. That's his house. He had his house made like the inside of a flying saucer. Like it was a big circular house in the woods in New York State. It looks dope.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a wild looking house. And that was Jackie Gleason. I mean, he could, any fucking house he wanted, he could get. And he decided to make this.
Yeah.
And he said it was because that's what he saw when he went to visit Nixon, or so the legend has it.
That's trippy. Houses.
Yeah.
I just don't believe that I don't believe the universe just chose us to be the only one.
Yeah.
Look at these guys. They're so special. They're going to be the only one in existence.
You know what, though?
Nobody in trillions.
I'll have to agree 100. So fun fact, I am an alien enthusiast. I definitely believe in aliens. I've been to Area 51, touched the gate, and a black Suburban definitely told us to leave. So definitely been there, but I always tell people the same thing. I know it sounds crazy, but part of me wants to think the government wants you to think it's crazy. But if outer space is theoretically infinite, how are we the only ones here? And where does all this new technology come from? Like, we have the same research. I mean, this is going down the route. I'm such a nerd when it comes out of this. I've always had like everything's getting bigger, everything's getting smaller, and we still have the same resources that are in the ground, but somehow somebody's figured it out. There's been people who figure out there's
A miles away going to be existing with them. Trillions of miles. I mean, from the end of time, there's nobody's going to ever exist but us. We're going to handle all this space by ourselves. You believe that?
No, I don't believe that.
So 10 million miles of space, there's nobody. 1 billion miles of space, there's nobody but us.
I think there's definitely some visiting us over the course of human history. The question is like, how often and how does it do it?
But listen, it doesn't have to be...
Or are they here and they're hiding in plain sight, almost like in Men in Black? Once again, sounds crazy, just a theory. I'm moving my hands again, but if you think about it, the best thing is to hide in plain sight. And there are theories out there, like what would they, because I remember growing up and it's like, oh, they want the water, they want our resources, but it's like, I don't think they want the water. And there is oh God, this is going to make me sound insane and I'm going to lose all of you right here, even if you've made it to this far. But there is a theory out there that they cannot reproduce and they need us to reproduce. And I have watched so many interviews with people who've been abducted and have been... So I don't know if that is a stretch. But if you think about it, if they are here hiding in plain sight, why and what do they want? Like, do they have a deal with the government? Is there some form of peace treaty? Who knows? I just lost all of you right there.
Physically, it could be spiritual.
Right. Yeah. Right. They may be able to like view into our area.
What's my wife talking about this? What's my wife talks about? Glitz time and ultra. Sometime it gets some time where you gotta watch out. Mm-hmm. Everything could be bad. If what could happen would happen. What's the name? I don't know, but it's some ultrasound. Something happens.
Or maybe they are here. They just kind of like take form of of humans, right?
That could be.
No, listen.
What did I just say? They're hiding in plain sight, man. That's what I'm saying.
We can't see the dust that's killing us. It's so microscopic. They might be in front of us and microscopic, right? We can't see the dust that's killing us. It's microscopic.
Right. Why do they have to?
us.
Maybe they're so advanced they don't have to be here to be here. Maybe they could view into here. Maybe they could peer into our world.
Maybe they are conscious.
Oh, this reaction is hilarious, but that's what I'm saying. So you could go into a million directions here. I love this part of the conversation because I'm such an alien enthusiast, but like this also, I mean, the weed that they are smoking, it just did, I mean, you could tell just makes you think that anything is possible. So I love where this conversation is going, and I hope it keeps going. Let's go.
I used to think that maybe ideas were aliens because ideas make you create them. Like everything that's ever been made, a light switch, a computer, everything that's ever been made came out of an idea.
Yeah,
so if something wants to get made, how does it get made?
What did I just say? I mean, it's interesting to hear it from that perspective, but I was more so talking about it from a physical standpoint where once again, whether there's a treaty between us and them or just the technology, maybe there's a trade or just something, because we just reverse engineer these things because they come here, they crash here, and I feel like the government and scientists and engineers get in there, rip it apart, and just reverse engineer everything. So that is an interesting perspective, but see, this is what I'm talking about. All right, that does it for this podcast interview breakdown. But before you go, if this is your first time on this channel, my goal is to help podcasters like yourself become the authority in their niche with podcast interviews. So if you have a podcast or you're thinking about starting one shortly, this free download is for you. It's a list of my top 25 podcast interview questions that I use to make me sound like a professional, and it gives me the ability to get those golden nugget sound bites so you can double your downloads and turn your listeners into leads. The link for this is in the description, and we'll see you next time.